So to navigate life and to navigate attention, you could frame your attention as how your mind follows tension. And what's the tension? The tension is the current reality. Pankaj is in this migration isn't done yet. The vision is where his catastrophizing is going. What if, what if, what if? So now there's a gap between right now and getting it done. And getting it done could lead to catastrophe. Loss of reputation, loss of deal, loss of that. So that creates structural tension. Right here. Yeah. And that structural tension has turned potential into a negative. Potential is neutral, could be good or bad, but right now you're focused on the negative potential. So then while you're seeking resolution, that's your anxiety, you have emotional tension and you have creative tension, two types of tension. But I'd say that emotional tension is in control right now. You're not using this tension as a chance to be creative. Like, how can I spend this? How can I learn from this? How can I change? Right now you're like focused on worst case scenario. Why didn't I think about that? So your emotional tension is taking all of your focus instead of the creative tension, which is a good metaphor for narcissistic abuse, because a narcissist plays on your emotions to get you to react and do old patterns, so you have no creativity on how to adapt better, how to counter them, because all your focus is on trying to
same
stop
feeling
the
I'm
emotion.
having, the same fucking feeling when that sort of thing happens. Like, same kind of feeling, but no one else was here.
So you have the same weakness of navigating tension, and there's a bias on not knowing how to balance emotional tension with creative tension. And that's a muscle of attention training. If you look at a lot of meditation practices, aren't they just training your attention to stay on the object, return to the object, stay relaxed on the object through the waves, the ups and downs of distraction, mental stress, mind wandering? It's building this capacity to tolerate tension. And then when you can tolerate tension, then you can slowly build more creative tension. And not just get caught up in the swirl of the emotional tension.
But with the emotional tension, it can be one of anticipation, excitement, but this one is of not that. It's like nearly even sadness a little bit. Why would you do such a stupid thing? Now I'm thinking, is it a way to self-sabotage it?
No.
My gut was saying, don't do it.
Jumping to Act 3. But since this is such a good example, we'll just go with it. So self-discrepancy theory is a model that says there's two stresses of the dissonance, of the tension gap. And there's a gap between where you are yourself and where you should be based on your ideals. Right here. the top one. So when your real self is different than the real world, your actualized self, then you feel sadness, disappointment, depression. So you're saying like, I should know better. My ideal, my standards aren't met. My potential isn't met. Then you'll have sadness, disappointment, depression. And codependents don't like going to rock bottom. They don't like sitting with sadness. They rescue everybody else's sadness. So guess what? Codependents don't have a moral philosophy and they don't know their values. They don't know their ideals because they don't explore the feelings that would identify your ideals. Your self-guide, your true self, based on your ideals, the doorway to finding that out is sitting with sadness, sitting with disappointment, learning how to deal with rejection.
It just feels you're going so fast. I just can't stay up with you.
You don't need to. I'm talking to your inner child. You trying to keep up with me is the other self, the self versus aughts. This is your fawn self. Codependents have a strong fawn self. The fawn self is a public self that wants to be safe, that wants to do the right thing, that wants to make sure that Pankaj is keeping up to Deef's presentation. That's his public self. Is he publicly performing? And if he isn't, then there's anxiety, shame, and guilt. This is our mass self, which is...
We as humans are consummate actors. We play a role to flatter our peers, or teachers we want to win over. Since appearances are what people judge you by, we've learned to present the best possible version of ourselves. Make no mistake, we are all playing a role. We're all such good actors that we don't even know we're acting. We think we're being sincere. Recognize that everyone else is presenting a mask as well, hiding their insecurities, emphasizing their saintly qualities, making themselves appear humble, confident, diligent. People with consummate acting skills can better navigate our complex social environments and get ahead. If we accept the mask that people show us at face value, we're essentially operating blindly, inviting misunderstanding.
So that's codependents who take people at face value. And then narcissists are climbing the social hierarchy because they're impression management.
And missing opportunities. We need to learn to recognize people's nonverbal cues that they can't fully control and see through the cracks of what they say. Learning to see through people's masks will help you understand people in your life, relate with them deeper, know when someone is deceiving you, and help you navigate the complex social world we all live in. Your task as a student of human nature is twofold. Understand and accept the theatrical quality of life.
So life is a performance. But that means it works all ways. So you can create a theatrical spin if the worst case scenario happens in your situation and you lose reputation. It's all about the theatrics. It's not about what happens. It's how it's spun. That's what narcissists do constantly, right?
Play your part on the big stage of life with consummate skill. Attract attention, dominate the limelight, and make yourself into a sympathetic hero or heroine. You must not be naive and mistake people's appearances for reality. Become a master transcoder of nonverbal behavior. There are three aspects.
So this is harder nowadays because we've had 10 years of social media, and that creates avatars. So everyone's programmed to do this. like.
Oh,
Look, a bike ride done. All he did was wear the helmet.
that is so cool.
Look at her office.
Wow.
Healthy drink.
In the bin.
This is the modern millennials. They're spending quality time staring at cell phones. Big night ahead. Nope. It's only the picture. He's all sad and depressed. She wants a happy selfie.
We're over.
We're living in this fantasy. Social media rewards us to put a positive spin on everything.
That is so cool.
So that's sort of one way we ease the dissonance is we use self-deception. When reality is too ugly, we create a fantasy. And that's a shared fantasy for codependents. That's falling for the love bombing of the narcissist. They're able to distort reality, game reality, paint a fantasy. And because we have no sense of controlling reality, or reality is too shameful, we fall for the fantasy. So to ease the tension, to ease this tension of public self, of controlling anxiety, shame, and guilt, we fall for shared fantasy. We fall for self-deception. We cover up sadness. You cover up sadness, then you never discover your ideals. You never discover your true self. How's that fall? Is it too depressing?
So when yourself does not match your ideals, it leads to sadness, disappointment, and depression because you're not.
Yes, when you
don't even have connection to yourself.
You have two self-guides, where you sense tension between yourself and your ideals, your values. And when that's too far, that's too much tension, there's no possibility of getting your ideals, then you get depressed because you're not living to your standards. You're either nowhere close to living to what you value. So then you fall for shared fantasy because you can have somebody else tell you what you should be, your self-oughts. So you have someone else reflect to you a different storyline, a different value system. But then you can fall for self-deception or shared fantasy because someone will cover up your shame with positive shame. So they'll shame you in a positive by saying, you're perfect the way you are. You don't need to change anything. Or they'll lie to you. So I could lie to Pankaj and say, oh, that server is fine. There's no chance. Stop thinking about that. Whatever. So I could lie to him. Or I could try to boost the odds to say, like, you're worrying about a 5% thing or 1% thing. Or I could just empower him and say, if you lose this contract, that means you're going to get a next contract that's bigger. That's just going to create an opening, blah, 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 law of attraction, something like that. So you game these feelings with self-deception or gaming reality. But if you fixate on just these feelings and you don't get in touch with your sadness or your ideals, your moral philosophy, then you never know yourself. Which is this final slide, which is way too early. That's because Pankaj jumped in with his real story. So most of the time, people have your assumed self and your shown self. That's your public self here. And then this is who you think you are, your assumed self. Your evaluation of who you are, but since you're external locus of control, you're only taking what other people tell you, so you don't even know who you are. But it's as much as you know about yourself in here in the middle. And then you spend your time hiding or masking or fixing. So, Pankaj, did you want your feelings fixed? Did you want to hide some of your anxiety from us or yourself? Or
No, I don't want to hide. I'm just annoyed that I can't be on the pulse because I know it's really cool. I can intuitively know it's really cool, and it's just awful. I'm not able to be in it as I usually am.
You're not able to be in it as you usually are, so that's your ideal. So you had an old norm. It's a combination, so you have your ideal and you're sort of shaming yourself because you said, I used to be able to handle this stress, now I can't.
Oh, sorry, what I meant was that, usually when we are all talking together, I'm totally there, present.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so that's where you're judging yourself, that you're not able to keep
right now, I'm just noticing that but from what you said about the simulation, I could just say, guess what, Anthony? I got a ransom call for $500,000 because someone hacked my website.
Yes, you could create a nice story. Actually, there's a Seinfeld episode where George had like a side fender bender, and then Elaine created a story to get away with, or to build it up, and then by contrast, Jerry didn't care because
yeah.
Elaine said, we were being chased by these people, and then we had to go swerve here and here and there, and in the process, there was a little ding. Learn from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Where are we at? So how do we make sense of all this crap? Who's able to follow anything?
Yeah, I wasn't following. So what's the issue you're having? Pankaj?
A Pankaj issue? The recent
Yeah.
one or the original one?
I mean, is that what we're working on?
We're just wasting time. They're not doing anything.
No, I think we're saying if we don't really feel the sadness, when you feel the sadness, you're not used to feeling it because as a codependent, you've been pleasing and pleasing and you never really felt that rock bottom maybe, or that real deep sadness because you wouldn't let it happen. So you covered it up. And you don't really know yourself because you're still empty inside. By the covering it up, you're still, so the narcissist comes along and he told you everything that you know, that you're this and you're that, you're great, you're fabulous. And you're like, wow, somebody noticed me. I don't have to not feel. And you can actually fall for being seen as you, because you don't really know you though. You're not even sure who you are back then because you never really felt yourself.
You were just who you should have been, what somebody else told you.
Right.
Or what you thought was safe.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Or someone else's ideal of what you should be.
That's the auth is somebody else's ideal, not your ideal, not your values.
And there's a true self in there that experienced the trauma that is just the boy who's like cool with life, whatever's going on. But the trauma, I was watching the family system about how the trauma causes the parts to develop the internal family system. So the parts break off at the trauma points and hold the like the child wants to feel safe, and when the child isn't feeling safe, there's this other part of you that comes in and says, "Oh, it's not that bad," but it was that bad, and that part of you pushes down the truth of what happened, and I suppose the pain of the trauma with it, because this other part of you made you do that.
Well, the part that pushes the truth down, that's a part that's trying to...
What we're trying to do is mask pain. We're trying to mask vulnerability. What we're trying to do is mask pain. We're trying to mask vulnerability. What we're trying to do is mask...
Because it was unsafe to share your vulnerability as a kid. So you created this protector part, or the manager part, or whatever part, that's masking pain, so you become a producer. You can become a parent for your parents, or you can become a perfectionist, whatever. And that's a strategy to avoid, to survive. But the downside is by masking pain.
What we're trying to do is mask pain. We're trying to mask vulnerability.
You lose touch with yourself because you're masking your sadness. By masking your sadness, you're losing touch with your ideal self, your values. Because when you uncover your sadness about certain things, there's certain things that you're uniquely sad about, that you specifically care about. That's you. Because you and your sibling or somebody else in the exact same family environment, you're going to be sad about a certain thing. Somebody else is going to be totally sad about something else. That's their self-guide. That's their ideals. That's inside the sadness. But on the flip side, if your upbringing doesn't give you enough tension, frustration, failure, then you also don't get to know yourself. So let's see how this falls.
It's that friction between you and what you want and need from the world that gives you a sense of the edge of yourself, the edge of yourself. That's actually the beginning of narcissistic growing up processes. So when you're the center of the universe for this parent of yours, and then they start to disappoint you some, that actually forces the child to manage themselves.
So the disappointment, the parents disappointing the child, that creates the separation. That's also the same thing. Parents' disappointment helps the child see who they are. But if you had a narcissist parent who's disappointed and then forces you to control your action to jump through 5 hoops, that's not giving you space to discover yourself. That's not a good enough parent.
And their own ability to cope with what it means. And so that disillusionment actually, according to Winnicott, was like the beginning of forming an identity.
So disillusionment, disappointment of seeing your parents aren't God, or aren't going to always rescue you, or aren't always there to tell you what reality is. That's the beginning of building a self. That's the beginning of building boundaries. But if you didn't have that from your parent, and then you went to schooling, where administration from schooling told you what the reality was, they told you how you should be, then you never developed a self, you never had boundaries. And now therapists and self-help is telling you to build boundaries, but you haven't found yourself. So what are you going to defend? You have to feel out your boundaries.
And it's that friction between you and what you want and need from the world that gives you a sense of the edge of yourself.
So that's a different metaphor for tension. That friction between what you want and where you are, that gives you a sense of self.
Edge of yourself. When people leave home and become independent and they have to manage themselves, and the fact that nobody's really looking after them provides an opportunity for them to go through narcissistic growth, have enough self-esteem to do things that are good for them, and not having too much self-centeredness that they can't build relationships and connections and do the things they need to do around other people. That adaptation to a place that doesn't care about you as much.
That adaptation in a place that, what's the key?
About you as much, doesn't care about you as much.
A place that's sort of cold, that's similar to reality. So you can find yourself. If somebody else is flooding you with their care, you have no room to fail. You have no room to find yourself. You need to be in a place that's sort of neutral, that's sort of cold, that sort of simulates reality. That's not super safe. That creates tension. So you learn how to work with tension, and you can find yourself.
As much, doesn't care about you as much, allows people to learn how to manage themselves, manage themselves.
That's self-regulation, where therapy will try to force you to manage yourself, but if you don't know, you have a sense of yourself, you aren't in an environment where you're forced to find yourself and manage yourself, how are you going to learn the skill of self-regulation?
It's very difficult when they don't have that much stability or predictability of managing, because it makes it hard for both them to take risks, and it's hard for the environment to allow them to take those steps forward. So having this kind of growing zone of learning by putting the task a bit out of reach. This
is coaching, the coaching model versus therapy is trying to give you something that's just beyond your capacity to invite you to grow. To almost give you the answer or try to get you to come up with the answer so you are growing a little out of reach. So now if I can train you on how to put your attention out of reach or put your attention towards a goal, then you can take the same skill of guiding your vision of trying to put something just out of reach. But if you listen to law of attraction and New Age people, they're going to give you a goal that's way far out of reach that's going to guarantee disappointment. If you just say you're becoming a millionaire and you just work hard and you just hustle the rest of your life, you'll get there tomorrow. That's how they're presenting. They're putting the goal too far out of reach that guarantees disappointment. It has to be at the optimal distance where at least you somewhat believe it. That'll stretch you. And it doesn't matter if you make it. What matters is if it stretches you and you get close to it. Because next time you'll do better because the goal stretched you. But if you have a goal that's so delusional and you fall on your face, you actually go 2 steps backwards or 3 steps backwards because you've lost confidence in your ability to stretch because the goal was too delusional.
Yeah.
Or you fell for a cult, another narcissist, and then you say, I thought I was prepared. I found this altruistic narcissist and this cult seemed like a utopia. Then it fell apart. That's depressing.
Yeah, this is a parenting technique that you're talking about, having it just out of reach or just unattainable, where you have to put forth an effort.
Parenting, teaching, mentoring.
Yeah.
Sure.
That actually helps a young person strive, managing to get their own
Teaching,
needs met.
striving.
Growing zone a bit out of reach, that actually helps a young person strive, managing to get their own needs met.
Now, Neocon, did you see her body language? Or you're busy doing other stuff? Do you see, like, dissociation and sadness in her?
Yeah, you said her body language.
Yeah, look at her tension. Is she confident or is she spending lots of time trying to make sure she says it right? She's spending so much energy massaging her words.
I kind of get the same vibe as the man from last weekend.
Oh, Porges.
The distress in the face. But she has more control over the like the narrative. So there's a confidence in her eyes that's like, I know what I'm talking about, kind of thing, which is convincing. However, there's tension in
her body.
Yeah.
She works with borderlines full time, so she's learned to talk borderline, but she's using extra mental processes to talk in a softened tone back and forth to
almost like a walking on eggshells
yes.
kind of situation.
See, you sense the walking on eggshells because that's energy that she's projecting. This is another framing from Peterson. Oops. Unmute. Sound. No sound.
My son, who's relatively disagreeable.
Tough love.
There's a conditional element to it, and a judgmental element.
Tough love, but conditional approval as part of total love.
So conditional approval is another way to phrase striving. If you go to a therapist and you go to a group that says, this is safe, you're never judged, there's nothing to do. There's no striving. There's no muscle to build because you're here. We love you. Okay, I'm here. People love me. Let me go just dominate the whole conversation and be a monologue. Because there's nothing to do. There's no striving. You need an environment that gives you a goal, that has something that allows you to strive to prove yourself or test yourself.
My son, who's relatively disagreeable, man, he pushed boundaries at every opportunity when he was between 2 and 4. It was really something to behold. He was a force of nature in going right up to the line and pushing on it just to see what was going to happen,
That's setting boundaries or testing boundaries. Go to the edge and push to see what happens. It's not ordering someone else around and say, give me this feeling or never do this again.
I mean, right now, my son and daughter are teaching their son, who's slightly over 1, no. And I told them how to do it. So
this is how you teach a 1-year-old how to say no. Maybe you can copy it for yourself. Or Pankaj had some issues last meeting. So this is how you teach a baby. So you could do it this way and use chocolate.
for example, he sits at our table and he reaches behind and he's tearing the plants out of the green wall that's behind him. And so that's a no. And I encouraged them. I said, look, take his hand, hold it firmly so that he can't move it. Say no. Hold him until he stops struggling to undertake his goal-directed activity. He'll probably cry. As soon as he stops resisting, let go and give him a pat.
So he'll probably cry after he stops resisting. Then you give him a pat, so you positively affirm it.
So you do that 20 times. Then when you say no, he'll cry and stop. And then 20 times after that, he'll just stop. He won't cry. So 40 times, and you've taught him no, which is an amazing thing, because then you can let him go free, because whenever you say no, he'll just stop. And so you can facilitate his freedom instead of having to be a helicopter tyrant parent who is one step behind their ambulatory 2.5-year-old, interfering with absolutely everything he does because he can't grasp a basic principle of socialization. In any case.
So learning to respond to adult authority figures saying this is dangerous, but the adult authority figure is giving you room to explore your territory, letting you push edges and find stuff. That's normal socialization. But if you had a parent who didn't let you explore, or told you what it was and just capped off any exploration, or vice versa, if you had a parent who just let you run around and run into stuff and hit danger, both of those don't adapt you for the real world. Improper socialization.
No has some pain associated with it, because otherwise it wouldn't produce tears. And no is a very, very hard thing to learn. And no is what the world teaches, not just what people teach. That's the domain of order. And then there's another domain where all hell breaks loose and you don't know what to do, and that's the domain of chaos. But there's an intermediary where you're expanding your zone of competence through exploration. And that's really where consciousness operates. And that's where we learn. And so risk-taking behavior isn't exactly risk-taking behavior. It's embeddedness in the zone of proximal development. That's where we learn. The reason for that is that, there's another judgment, which is, the risk is worth taking, because there's more than one risk at play here. There's the proximal risk that you engage in when you push yourself, but there's the distal risk that you engage in when you don't push yourself. That's where we learn, through exploration.
So there's a zone of proximal development, and that's where you're in this sort of sweet spot of creative tension. Do I have another one? Where if you don't have enough tension, if it's too safe, there's no extra stringiness, there's no bounce. So, not enough tension, no improvement, no growth, too safe. If you're rewarded by being a victim, no growth, no improvement. You're kept from hitting rock bottom, so it's safe enough. But no tension, not proximal development. not enough friction. Can't discover yourself. But then at the same time, the people that are too safe, they end up having also too much tension in other domains of their life. Too much tension means that you get snapback. Snapbacks sort of hurt. Unless you learn how to snap back and blame someone else. Maybe that's what narcissists do. So. When life snaps back for Trump, you can just blame somebody. So he's learned to use too much stress, too much tension, positively, by finding a codependent to blame. And the codependent's stuck on the love bombing, so they're sort of stuck. Where are we at? 8:30. So, who's followed, who's confused?
I followed.
Angie followed, Debbie followed.
I followed.
Pankaj is thinking of chocolate.
I followed too.
And Khan followed.
So what is the life experience of the child in the too much tension scenario?
Someone who had too much tension, stress, and possible burnout. So
Complex PTSD survivors?
if you grow up as a child and there's too much tension, let's probably assume that it's too much.
Maybe like an overbearing parent?
Too much shoulding, too many oughts. So you're going to grow up with toxic shame, guilt issues, hypervigilance, anxiety. So you might be something like conflict averse, people pleasing, walking on eggshells, perfectionist, highly avoidant, like this, maybe.
This is codependency, ladies and gentlemen. It is a neurotic drive, no choice, no freedom, to serve, to submit, to fawn, to supplicate. It is a terror of negative emotions in yourself and in others.
So you get trained of these emotions being negative, mostly from others, but also yourself. And then the predominant emotion you feel when you go to sport groups is you feel pity, and you jump in everybody else's pity story, and everybody just wallows in pity. Did that answer your, or that sort of answer your question, right, Holly? What happens when there's too much...
Yeah, well, I was wondering what the experience of the family of origin would be to create that tension. Too much overburden, parents who overburden, or trauma, or...
Any number of things. You can have trauma, you could have alcoholism.
Yeah, trauma.
You could have neglect. So you could have too much. So you have too much control. But the control is chaotic. So if you had someone controlling who was like military and everyone had to follow the same rules, those kids seem to do okay. But if the control was chaotic, or the kid can't find any structure, the kid couldn't find couldn't figure out the rules were too confusing.
Yeah, no stability.
Couldn't find stability in shame and guilt.
Yeah.
So that can happen with too many rules. It can happen with inconsistent rules, and it can happen with just absentee neglect.
Yeah.
Or it can happen with genetics. So someone could have like borderline traits, and then every relationship is a rupture because they're overreading all the shoulds. They're overreading micro-expressions. And then they're projecting their rejection onto the other person and then making the other person act it out. So it validates their rejection narrative.
Right.
Right.
So back to the Jordan Peterson example, is there a fine line between, or I guess, between developing learned helplessness in your child, doing that, holding of the child's hand when you say no?
Well, he said,
I mean, I guess it would have to be
after the
done
child stops doing it, you let go of it and give him a pat. So it's not. He's not saying, yes, you could go take the kid, and then you could beat the crap out of the kid until it's unconscious. But that's not what he was promoting, I think. I didn't hear that.
Well, I mean, I have trouble with that, putting your hands on the child and restraining them. That just
Well, if you
seems
don't
abusive
restrain
to
the
me.
child's 1 year old. How are you going to communicate to the child if you're not going to use body language?
I don't know.
Kids
I don't.
kids catch on to sign language and things like that pretty quickly. We did sign language with my son just a little bit because he had a speech delay. But yeah, that seems to me, mine are 5 and 7. So I remember when they were that age pretty clearly. To restrain them in that manner would be a little bit traumatic for them, to me.
Yeah, this is the part where.
Have
Jordan
you seen
Peterson is
1 year olds
accused of
play
child
with other
abuse.
1 year olds?
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Do they restrain each other? Do they get in each other's space? Do they hit each other and poke each other?
Of course they do.
Do they find
That's
it
what babies
traumatic because other babies abuse them or older siblings
do.
abuse
No, I think
them?
the parents find it traumatic, and they don't. And Jordan is saying that you don't want to have to follow behind your child. So
You teach them to associate restraint with the word no.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with like teaching them the word no. I think like there's probably a better way to do it. They can be taught that without being restrained.
Well, the thing is, that's a question of technique. His argument is saying if you don't teach the kid boundaries, then the price is they don't learn how to socialize in the world.
Right, and I don't think the restraint is like a strong arm kind of restraint. It's like at a baby level restraint.
Yeah, you're an adult with a baby. You don't need to use excess energy.
You don't.
to
Yeah,
restrain a baby.
and you have to use your tone of voice also. Like when you say the no, it's not like no, how you would say it to a child who actually understands the sound, but you say it with a very soft tone, like no, no, no. And then when they stop, then you kind of pat them and go, okay, all right.
Well, it may
And
work,
then they
but
get-
the question
and
is,
then they-
is it traumatic to the child? That's the question.
What is traumatic to the child? Okay, so for example,
Having
when I
their
was
body
growing up,
restrained and
This
learning around
question,
helplessness.
No,
I'll
it's
reframe this into what happens if you don't teach your kid boundaries at 2 to 4.
Yeah, they should be taught.
So anyways, the 2-year-old's a collection of these
this is
sort of
Peterson's
random
opinion.
motivations, more or less gets his or her act together
It's
by
not just his
about
opinion,
3
this is based
if
on
they're
research.
being socialized properly, and that means that the parents are doing their best to make the child acceptable to other children. That's your damn job as a parent.
So if you disagree with this, then you can argue about the tactic. But if you want to be an
No, I don't
effective
disagree with
parent,
that.
you have to make your kids socializable so that they don't
Absolutely.
get rejected, attacked, they don't do stupid shit. So even if
but
that
is that
takes
the appropriate
abuse,
age
that's
to
your
do it?
role of a job. Now, listen to the age. Peterson was saying 1-year-old for the baby for no.
I
This
know
is 2 to
that.
4-year-old. So listen to this argument. And if you disagree with this, then I can follow your other argument.
You have to understand that, because if your child isn't acceptable to other children, they won't play with your child. And then your child will be lonesome and isolated and awkward, and they will never recover. Because if the kid doesn't get that right between 2 and 4, it's over. They're never going to learn it. The other kids accelerate forward, that kid's left behind. And it's not a good life for that kid.
This is autism. This is any other neurodiverse developmental delay. I didn't keep up in middle school, so I'm just left behind. I have to work out the kinks, and the world doesn't care. If you don't keep up with the track, the way the school goes, you're left behind.
Don't learn how to play with others, and then they're done. And there's a huge literature on trying to rectify antisocial children, say from the age of 4 on. It's like, no, you can't. And you can go ahead and read 300-400 papers on rectification of antisocial behavior and figure it out for yourself. But I did that for about 5 years, and it was a while ago, but I know the literature hasn't changed. So you got to get it right between that period. You got to get the kid together enough so they can control themselves well enough so that they can adopt a mutual frame of reference with.
So the kid, a socialized person, needs to control themselves. They need to learn self-restraint.
Are you
They
saying
can't
that
learn
antisocial?
self-restraint, then they can't build a bridge with the other person that's mutual. Then they
Of
can't
course.
socialize. Period.
Of course.
That's
But what
the
I'm
real
saying
world.
is, yeah, but the real world is also an antisocial child who's a bully can make plenty of friends.
That's
They can get plenty of people to socialize with them.
by bullying. What's your point? That's not a counter.
Well,
How's that
what
going
I'm
to work
saying
as
is,
an adult?
what I'm saying is they won't necessarily be shunned. Well,
How's that going to work as an adult?
it doesn't work well at all.
Okay,
I'm not
so
saying
then
that. I'm saying I'm disagreeing with him that that child will be shunned. No, that child isn't always shunned. That child could become a menace and still
you're
have
arguing a
circle of people
semantical
around him.
argument.
Looking at the syntax, yeah.
You're arguing a syntax of his argument. That's not his point. His point is the bigger point.
Isn't Trump basically shunned right now? And he's a bully.
He's shunned
Catch
by
up
the community
eventually.
he wants to join, yes.
I agree with him that the 1-year-old should be taught no, but restraining him in that manner, I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with his ideas about what should be taught.
Did he say that this is the only way you can teach no to a 1-year-old? Did he say
No,
that the whole world must do this way and there's absolutely no other way? It has to be done with this amount of... Where did he say this? That's what... Sounds like that's what
I'm
other
just
people are
saying
arguing. That
the restraint thing is bad. That's all. Yeah.
Why is it bad?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad.
It's traumatic for them. Yeah. Like.
And this is from
Jordan
what-
Peterson
So
supports
if the kid goes and
corporal
like
punishment
runs
for
into the
children.
middle of the street, and the only way to stop him from getting run over by a car is to physically restrain him,
yes.
that's bad because it might hurt his feelings
That,
or be
but-
traumatic. So
We're
let him
So
talking
he can
about
get run
corporal
over
punishment.
or he can get physically restrained.
Yeah. I'm not
Where are you
going
going to draw
this
the
issue.
line?
I'm not going to debate it.
intention is to keep him safe. Like the intention of the parent is to keep the child safe.
Yes.
Of course, I
So if
understand.
the child is reckless, doesn't know where there's sharp knives around, you restrain him from sharp knives. From his own ignorance.
No, that's not
You're
true.
going to argue
You can-
that the
you could teach
restraint
a
was
child
too
to handle a
traumatizing?
knife. You can actually teach a child to handle a knife. There are children in certain countries that actually handle knives.
Yes, there's tribes that just let child play with fire, and they
We used
suffer
to
the
we used to
consequence. Yeah.
we used to play with machetes back home. It didn't mean that it was safe and fun.
Yeah.
It was for fun. We would take sharp machetes and play, like seriously, and sometimes hurt each other. When our
Do you
parents
guys not
weren't
know
around.
how
That's what people
reckless
did in
kids
the
are?
village.
That's how
Yeah.
kids play. If the adult doesn't give some boundaries or structures, kids hurt each other. That's what kids do. Michael
even
Jordan
as a
chopped
teenager-
off half of his big toe because he's just playing around.
But even as a teenager, I remember we used to climb uncompleted buildings and jump from like the 5th floor down to the sand. And it was risky because sometimes you miss the sand and something terrible could happen. So, you know, when you don't restrain the child earlier, I think they, you know, it just keeps going. They test the boundaries until, unfortunately, you know, something bad happens.
So restraining someone teaches them how to stretch. If you don't restrain them, you don't give them the capacity to stretch. And if somebody has linguistical challenges and they respond more to physical sensation or physical punishment, you're using a different communication medium that some kids don't get. So it's ideally you can say, in the perfect world, you wouldn't have to cause any harm onto any other person.
My son had a speech delay, and in speech therapy, to learn new vocabularies, game playing was a big thing. You know, there was no restraint involved, but just like getting in the floor with him and playing a board game that has the word no in it, maybe, or maybe calling out no when some sort of action that where you stop and you don't take the action in the whatever game that you're playing is a better
so I think
route to take.
This is
what age would that be?
What age? Pankaj.
Angie?
Huh?
What age would that be at, like that sort of game playing?
He started at 2.
I think this is also...
But at 1, they're also playing games on the floor like that.
This might be also a motherly issue of letting kids be sad.
That's why you need both parents.
So a masculine parent has the father figure has a traditional different role than a mother figure. And the mother figure typically, generally, not all, just to say, they have difficulty with letting babies cry too much because you've been programmed to meet the needs. That's almost autopilot. So this wasn't exactly today's topic, but it sort of goes into the argument or the different positions that's being argued.
Dad's teasing children, and which feels to many moms like it often results in the child crying.
Child crying equals trauma.
But it begins to teach the child a whole series of skill sets. What tones of voice are teasing?
Aniakon mentioned tone.
Or playfulness.
I wanted them always to stay on the funny side of teasing, because teasing can easily turn into torture. And so they had to learn these extremely fine gradations of humor.
So fine gradations. So somehow holding the hand was perceived as an insulting gesture. Where from his other explanation, there's gradations of nuance. It's not just pure insult.
And to do that, they had to play on the edge. And the question is, how necessary is it to have the capacity to allow your children to play on the edge? And fathers have that by temperament more than mothers do.
So when something triggers something that is very specific, the child will tend to sort of open up on his or her own terms. And interestingly, I said hangout time was very important for boys. It's the single greatest predictor of psychological security in girls.
Hangout time with fathers, the single greatest predictor of psychological safety for girls.
Hangout time with dads. That the dad is more likely to say, well, you know, what did you do that maybe was not so good as a goalie? What do you think you can do that's different with the coach next time?
That's more of a problem-solving approach.
Or a problem.
And you think that's associated with a positive developmental consequence for IQ?
There are so many developmental advantages to a lot of the things that dads do, but I want to really make it clear that dads don't say to moms things like, I'd like to roughhouse with the children because it will increase the children's empathy. I'd like to tease with the children because it will increase their social abilities to play.
Right. God, who could stand to be married to someone who did that?
Yes.
I wanted the kids to be inoculated against casual insult. You have to take that with a sense of humor, or it just mounts. I've seen people who can't respond to that initial testing because people want to socialize with people who are about as socialized as them. And so what they'll do first is throw out some teasing and see what happens. And if
So this is how teasing works. If someone is effectively socialized from 2 to 4 as an adult, this is what effective teasing works. And this is how people size other people up to exclude them or include them. Because in the real world, people exclude people on a dime. Any sort of first impression, you're just excluded. There's no automatic entry.
it evokes a playful response, then they know that the person that they're dealing with can be relied on to play and has been reasonably socialized.
The commerce of masculinity is the trading of wit-covered put-downs. The trading of wit-covered put-downs is because men learn that if you can't handle criticism, you're not going to be successful.
You're also unpredictable because it means that if something small and upsetting comes along, you're going to get big and upset.
This is, in the real world, this is usually, if you want someone to trust in a battle, you want to see if they can stand up to some stress. But on social media, if you throw a fit, you get status. So now if you overreact, you get some social status with cancel culture. But in the real world, without any of these big social structures, this is, if you overreact and you freak out from a tease, you can't be trusted.
It's too dangerous in a crisis.
The feeling is if you can't be teased, you can't be trusted. If you can't be teased, you can't be trusted. It's an invitation to play. It's an invitation to be
if you're skilled at it, right? I mean, a tease can go too far and then it's insulting, but the really good tease is right on the edge. They're sophisticated enough to know when a comment is right on the edge.
That's boundaries. If you have the skill to tease and you have the skill to push the edge of a boundary, that means you can see a boundary and you can play with it. If you're terrified of getting close to anybody else's edge, let alone your edge, you have no boundaries.
You have no edge.
You have no edge. If you have no edge, you don't know boundaries. Memorizing boundaries and telling the whole world this is the way it should be, that's not boundaries. It feels like boundaries because you're pushing somebody else's edge by projecting some worldview, but you're not creating a bridge with other people. Therefore, you'll be alone. Another common issue of codependence. So then you only need somebody else who's enmeshed with a narcissist, though they also have no boundaries.
And they're resilient enough to tolerate it and respond in kind. So it's a compliment of the highest order to push like that.
Now what we've done is
So I push people to the edge and then people insult me. I'm actually trying to give you a compliment, invite you to see what your edge is, to tease back. But some people you've been raised by women, so you don't know how to tease out the edge. You don't know how to work with tension. You don't know how to banter or flirt. So then
institutionalized
you're screwed.
This teasing as a problem. So the woman goes to HR and says, I was discriminated against what he said to me.
Right, thus failing a test in a more profound way, because one of the things you do when you're in elementary school and junior high school and high school for that matter, and then in the workplace is tease someone and see if they run off to find a figure of authority or whether they can deal with it themselves. Exactly. Because you assume that if they have to run off and find a figure of authority, that they're not mature enough to solve their own problems.
That's exactly right.
They're not mature enough to solve their own problems. They're not mature enough to solve their own problems.
Looking for a safe place.
We're overmanaged, so everyone's been taught to appeal to authority. Which isn't all bad, but also modern culture, victimhood culture, is also trying to take down hierarchy, patriarchy. They're actually trying to take down the whole system. And they want the police and the authority administration to enforce all the rules. How can you have both of these goals? It just destroys the whole system. That's the current political model.
But guys, eyes, they're not.
They're not soft. What?
Because we were talking about it the other time. Like his is fine.
Or his? Which one?
Yeah. What do you think, Anakin?
What about what?
You want a Peterson's eyes commentary?
No, they're fine. But often when the other dude is speaking, it's very.
This guy's he's more anxious.
Yeah.
Something's going on.
Because it's a touchy subject too, but Peterson is more confident in the issue than he is, so he's trying to, I think, massage it into society softly, whereas Peterson's style is more sledgehammer. Because he's not afraid of the consequences.
Peterson's he's lectured a lot, so he has better linguistic skills.
Yeah,
this guy's probably more of a researcher, so he's not as
I'm seeing a bit of dissociation, sort of, that we were talking about the other time. It's not like.
But speaking of that experience, though, what they're both talking about, like especially being put in tough situations, I'm kind of thankful now for my parents dumping us right in the village back in, when we went back home to Nigeria, because we had to learn the language fast, because they will go on you all day, whether it's school, home, whatever. People are speaking a language you don't know and they're laughing at you. Creates a lot of embarrassment and tension. So we had to learn the language really fast and adapt. And, so I feel like nowadays we would have been shielded from it. Because we ate rice for a year, rice and cornflakes. We didn't eat any other foods. And then at some point it was like, you got to eat what everybody else eats. There was no structure, and they literally took us to the supermarket and said, okay, here's where they buy food. So look at the difference between what this looks like and what you just came from. Like, there is no cookies and whatever. Like, this is it. So I think that kind of approach kind of toughened us up to accept the reality of where we were. But what I see now in a lot of Nigerian Americans or whatever, they go to Nigeria and they do the same thing, but the difference is they get it. So it kind of makes them narcissistic in a way, because they don't care about what other people's plights are. So they go to Nigeria and something is like 20,000 naira. And they go, oh, that's just like $5. And so they don't understand, but someone, it's not the same. You can call home and they're sending you money. And, it's not that sweet over here. That's why you see people not eating cookies or drinking sodas. They drink soda on occasion and stuff like that.
Special occasions,
Yeah.
And with trauma, what Angie was saying in Hollywood talking, I could sense in their language as well, was that the act of restraint it could be traumatic. But if we just reframe it, that the act of restraint is just at a very physical sort of level. But if it doesn't have an emotional charge of looking down, then there is no real trauma. The times of trauma where when you actually are shamed and stuff like that. What do you think about that? I've often had that with my niece. The two nieces. At 2 years old, 1 year old said, so my way is no, and just take the hand and divert it and just pick them up and have a dance with it. And suddenly, and now, very gently, hey, no, come on, man. That's enough to say no. We'll just stop.
Yeah. We used to use a different tactic when our cousins would come and stay with us. So it would be like a lot of adults. So we would play cards and other games. So the kids would want to join. My younger siblings at the time, I think they were very young, like 2 or 3. So they saw everybody grouped together laughing and they want to join. So when we were playing cards, they would come in and scatter the cards and disrupt it. And they laugh because they think that's their part in the game. So what we started doing,
That's how you play the game.
We'll have a deck of fake cards, and when they come in, we'll pick them up, put them on our lap, and give them a deck of fake cards, and be like, "Put yours down. It's your turn." And they'll put it down, and then everybody else is playing the real game, and they're playing the fake game, and then within minutes they'll get bored and roll out themselves. But they feel accepted, that they were accepted into the card game.
Yeah.
I would give my sister an unplugged game controller while I'm playing, so she thought she was playing.
Right. And that's all they need sometimes. It's funny how that works like magic, because all they want is to say, "Notice me." And you do that and they're bored within 3 minutes. Like, I don't get how these people do this. And they walk away and go find something else to do.
They have a short attention span at that age.
Right. Yeah. But they're learning community. And that's another thing too. Like the way we eat back home, everybody eats from one plate. And then everybody starts retiring from the oldest person. Like the oldest person will leave first. And then it keeps going down all the way down to the youngest people finish the rest of the meal and then wash the plate. But it's naturally built like that. So as they grow, they just know if they're eating alone, then when they're done, they'll wash the plate.
Mm-hmm.
I actually miss that though. I miss eating as a group. It's almost like playing a game. It's fun.
Yeah.
Breaking bread. Yeah. So how do we summarize today's meeting?
It was bullshit. No, I'm kidding.
Anyone get traumatized? Is Pankaj better, or are you still ruminating?
I remember this.
A bigger thing to worry about? Look.
Chocolate.
I'm not kidding.
At that giant...
I bought it.
Chocolate! Nice.
And actually having the damn things, it just relaxes you. Yeah, nice piece of cake.
Just having it.
Awesome.
See? Bravo.
Awesome.
9 o'clock. Okay. Let's put a time box.
That's all, folks.
Formal session over. After party. Who knows what's going to happen afterwards. We tried to give something more formal because Kurt commented that it was getting too boring. But then he only showed up for the last 10 minutes or something. I think Kurt missed the big standoff with me and Holly. I don't know if she's still pissed off or not.
Wow, missed it. What happened?
What happened? Holly thought that Peterson was advocating traumatizing 1-year-old babies or something. Is that a summary? I don't. You're not supposed
that's
to touch
exactly
babies.
What Holly did.
He promotes corporal punishment, and I'm against it. So that's all it is. Yep.
I think Jordan Peterson said something to the tune of twist the kid's neck, punch him a couple of times in the chin, set him straight, get a belt.
Yes, that's what he was saying. Yeah,
that's what he was saying. I think
holding the hand. He was saying, knock him silly multiple times, give him lifelong trauma, or prepare him for the USC. Some USC fighters grew up with.
It's like Sean Connery. It's an interview, and he talked about smacking the woman around a little bit.
Recently? Your audio
This is
didn't.
plastic. This was a long time ago. This was back in the 80s, I think.
Oh, back in the 80s. Long time ago.
You're cutting in and out.
Well, that's the sort of thing we're not allowed to tease anymore because cancel culture is so policing of language. You can't even make fun of violence or a little aggression. Everything's been softened.
Yeah, people get immediately triggered and jump on you. Can't even get a word out.
But if everyone gets triggered so easily, isn't that a sign of lack of boundaries, lack of sense of self?
Absolutely.
If people are listening, like, oh, what you're saying might hurt somebody else who's not even here 5 years from now. I must go correct your language because some minority might be pissed off, blah, blah, blah. That's a lot of...
Yeah, what about the person you're pissing off by trying to referee their language? You don't care about that.
That person's otherized. Yeah.
Or even victimizing someone who's not a victim by calling some random person a minority when they're actually doing well and they probably don't see themselves that way.
Yeah, you saw these, what was it, during the BLM stuff, you saw these little white ladies screaming and yelling at black police officers.
Right.
It was, like, so ironic, like, cognitive dissonance.
Yeah,
Right.
gonna say that, yeah.
Well, another argument is that there's a meaning crisis out there. So people have no... Like, America doesn't have an enemy, so we created terrorism. So without having Russia, Cold War, America needed someone to fight over. But terrorism wasn't a big enough enemy, because now we're just polarized. We attack the other side. Democrats, Republicans, we're just attacking each other. So
Yeah,
there's
the drug war stick.
It's so boring because everybody keeps saying the left, the right. And I'm like, what the fuck does this shit mean? Everybody's like, oh, people on the left is their fault. And then people, oh, the right wingers. And then they say the conservatives. And everybody's just pointing in different directions.
blame shifting,
Okay.
pointing.
Yeah.
And you lose sense of self, or you're spending all your time trying to save the world, but from some other enemy. But your other enemy is your projection, and both sides are projecting a one-dimensional frame or snapshot of the other side, of the other extremists.
Yeah, it's very weird because nowadays, like, there are people who actually go to comedy shows to look for trouble, like to look for the one thing the comedian is going to say that they disagree with, so they can film it and make themselves look good by quote unquote exposing the comedian.
This was not a problem back before, like, cell phone cameras. Like, there was, like, the raunchiest, most politically incorrect stuff being said in, like, comedy clubs.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what it was.
There's no safe space anymore.
Yeah, that's what changed it back then. Like, I remember I was watching this documentary and Richard Pryor said something like, do you know that there's a chokehold that police give black people? And he's like, yeah, look, black people are nodding to each other, and all the white people are like, really? I didn't know that. Now that joke would be considered racist.
Yeah, but the other thing is the development of the jokes, because, like, they got to try out the material to see if people laugh, if it sticks, if it's funny. It might be funny in your head, but, you know, not come out.
Yeah.
But
it was
now it's like you can't even practice or say something, because there's no room for error.
Right.
Because if you say the wrong thing, you're canceled. You're blah blah blah. Your career is over. Like, whatever.
See,
new age comedy. The best way to describe it is a TED Talk. It's a TED Talk. It's actually more boring than a TED Talk. They just get up there and be like, oh yeah, you know, everything is like very, you can tell like this person is walking on all kinds of edges. Like,
Well, it's also a lot of it's recycled from what hasn't gotten canceled yet from the
right.
past.
True. Yeah. Just makes, you know, makes the whole situation super boring.
So if the community makes no room for error, and then they put a label of safe space everywhere, but if there's no room for error, it's a cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, because it's not really nowhere safe. Everywhere, every word is a landmine.
Because it's all platforms. Your whole history and social media, any sort of video recording or accusation. You're caught, no room for error in all your life spheres. So then, how do you find your boundary? How do you find the edge? If you always have to play it safe.
Right. I was talking to someone recently, and the conversation kind of got into, like, I talked a little bit about this group. Don't worry, I didn't name names. But yeah, I was talking to them and they're like, wow, this sounds like an amazing group. I want to join. I'm like, no. This is black belt stuff. Like, you don't want to join.
We are racist.
And I know that person, and I know they will come in here and be shocked at everything, including the videos you're sharing, the diagrams. They would be shocked and triggered the whole time. Because I explained that to them. I said, this group does the opposite, where they actually trigger that stuff out of you so you can see it and work on it. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm like, yeah, all right. Come in and dox the whole fucking thing and destroy this. I was like, well, no. At first, I kind of had two thoughts. First, I was like, maybe I should let them have that experience. But at the same time, from talking to this person further, there are certain people that don't get it. And they'll just, you know, like I said, because I know a lot of people who are on social media looking for trouble to kind of use it to shine, you know. So I was like, no, it's not.
You don't trust them?
No.
Yeah. See?
Yeah. I don't. There's a difference between someone being curious and someone who's just looking for, like, what they're looking for is not here, basically.
That's a muscle that codependents
Well, if they're looking for
don't have.
drama, bring them in here so that we can practice on them. Yes, bring them in.
No.
He's not
I'd like to
trustworthy.
practice.
No, they're
That's
not
what we want.
trustworthy.
That person is not trustworthy.
I know. No, that person is not trustworthy. There's certain people who don't, like, there's certain dangers they bring along with them.
Yeah.
You know, like there's some people who would just quietly come in and maybe later on they tell me like, yeah, I didn't quite like it, you know. And then there are people who would attack. They don't end it at I don't like it, so they go after
cancel
everyone.
the group.
Yeah, exactly. So they try to figure out a way, and this person is one of those kinds of
You
people.
mean smear Deef's name?
Yep, smear the group entirely.
Smear the groove.
Your
Resentment.
campaign.
Shelley?
Oh no, I was just saying like a big smear campaign, like narcissism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you can tell that from how they talk. You know, they don't have a gray area. So their thinking is black and white. So this person had a lot of injunctions, you know. So they were like, you should, you know, this should happen. And I'm like, yeah, it's not what happens in the group. And they're like, no, you know, I really want to know.
See, in the old days, those people would never get into any clubs. But now, since education lets anybody in, the people that are good with language, they can cheat the system to pass through schooling. Now they can use academic gimmicks to get into different communities and get status. But in old cultures or older society, they would be blocked out. They wouldn't make it through the hazing. They wouldn't make it into any of the bigger clubs. Because there's always been troublemakers.
Yeah.
There's always people that are going to attack the society, antisocial. So they might not have antisocial personality disorder, but they have antisocial leanings, where they want to attack communities, attack society, and use their resentment against not fitting in or not knowing how to adapt to socialization.
Social justice warriors.
Yeah, social justice warriors. So they have a community now.
It's like you're administering justice to the world while leaving a trail of blood behind. It's like those action movies where you see the hero go and blow up every building and car in sight just to kill one villain and then claim victory afterwards. Like, what happened to all those people? They just, that whole building, they lost their house. You know, they lost their apartments.
All
you
the
know, blowing through
damage.
stuff. Yeah, the collateral damage. But hey, this is a hero because they saved the day. They captured the villain.
Well, Hollywood is promoting more of that, yeah. People
Right.
watch too many Hollywood movies.
Too many. That's something I had to, it was very hard to accept when I noticed that people actually adopt what they see in movies in real life. Like from action figures like the tough guy or tough chick character to the love, the romance.
Mm.
It was very hard for me to, I guess, let go of the notion that people would actually believe it.
Do you see that both in America and Nigeria, or do you see it more here in America?
I see it more here because in Nigeria, what they do is like Nollywood movies, like we talked about before, is showing actual life in Nigeria. But it raises a lot of questions where people have debates over what happened in that movie. Whereas here, they create a fantasy that is not real, and they have the equipment to make it real, you know, like the special effects and stuff like that. So, and the storylines are always happy endings, like love stories and stuff like that, or hero stories. And now I think there was something out where they put out a list on, they asked a questionnaire on Twitter, and they said they want to turn every movie that was male lead into female lead now, including Goodfellas.
Yeah, but most of those movies are bombing. They're doing it to James Bond too. Like the new James Bond's going to be a woman.
Right.
But
And
like
so
the
what that does,
one like failed miserably.
right? So it gives women a false sense of power, whereas in the real world, women are still terrified of a lot of, you know, situations naturally. But they make these movies and it gives false confidence.
Promotes a fantasy.
Right. Fantasy of some
that's divorced from reality, which is the problem.
Because I was watching, I don't know if you guys have seen Parasite.
Oh, yeah, Korean movie. That's the one where...
See, that was real because it shows you a poor family's fantasy, you know, and you can see them, how the difference between the two families, the rich family and the poor family, and how what they're going through and how they're living. But they added so much humor to it that it softened it up. But there's a very harsh reality there because that's actually what's going on where they are in real life, you know. But here in America, they would have to give it a happy ending, like, oh, and then the family adopted the other family after they found out that they were all, you know, and they lived happily.
Why are you shit talking happy endings? Americans are entitled to that. If they don't get it in the book or the movie, they get angry.
That Hollywood will not accept your movie if it doesn't fall by that. Where's the happy ending in this?
Fantasy.
I have got a happy ending story.
You don't need to hear it.
No, it's totally vegetarian.
Are you sure? That doesn't sound very PG.
No, see, were you there, Iman, when I was talking about my website issues and stuff? I was totally lost for it. Totally lost for it. Because some
Earlier?
shit was
Yeah.
done.
What's the update?
So one thing that I'm just not able to do is multitask, like, because I'm so engaged with one thing. Like I notice, not being sexist, but I notice women can just do it like, this, and this, and this. And one thing you mentioned last week, Deep, was about the loose engagement. That really was a very powerful moment of just being loosely engaged. Probably the first time I was able to do 3 things, and I was able to keep up with what you guys were talking. So I said, my worry was my site ground is expiring today at some time, maybe midnight. And I said, if it expires, all my data is gone. My emails are gone. I don't want to be doing this. So I just chatted to them and said, hey, I've moved to Hostinger.
Yeah.
If things don't work out, how long do you keep it? They said, we keep it for 30 days.
Haha.
So easy. And I'm talking with some Chinese people to get some labeling and all that done, and it can all be happening in the background. And that's a happy ending.
You got a buffer. You have this 30 days. Yeah. You didn't think of that.
Yeah, I thought it expires, it's the end of it.
You thought there was an axe?
Because once it happened, you see, with HostGator, they cut it off.
Yeah.
It's all gone. So it was trauma. It was like, and they said you have to come back, sign up again. And then, and I said, I'm never going to HostGator again. So maybe some of that that was remaining. No,
the past surprise, the past trauma created a predictive map for this next experience.
Yeah.
But now you were curious to investigate. Now you see you have some buffer room. So now your worst case scenarios are a lot more boring.
And the guy at SiteGround was so nice. I'm inclined to just go back anyway for the heck of it, because it's just so nice.
They answered the call. You got service instead
They
of
said, we'll help
wait.
you. We'll help you to transfer. So I said, how nice is that compared to bloody HostGator?
Yeah.
So my worries are over, and it's the weekend, and I'm going to relax, and I'm going to be telling Iman all my, in case someone opened the website, which is down right now, that I got a ransom for $500,000, make a nice story up. It's going to be so much fun.
Hey, now you're in creative mode.
Yeah, baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Creative tension instead of emotional tension.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Wow.
It's just so easy. It's just so easy to do that. Like, but you just, and last time when we were talking, one thing that remained, something came up, and when you were showing all these young people were taking selfies and they're not in it. They're not in it. They're just having like a simulacrum, like like Foucault's theory. And I have felt this in my being, that this computer world is going to actually help us to understand how we are, because we simulate it so beautifully. Like the camera tells us how the eye works, sort of thing.
Oh.
So what came up last time when we were talking was that, isn't it the case that there's a selfie only 10 years old, 8 years old, but I felt that I took a selfie when I was 3 or 2, and took a few selfies and thought about that. And I put them out there, that this is my identity, this is who I am. And I got a lot of positive feedback on some and negative feedback on the others. And the culture I was brought up in, if you comply, you get very positive feedback. So
you put up a front.
Took my selfie, put it out there, and now I live by the selfie. But the selfies have been going on for thousands of years.
They were called portraits back then.
Yeah.
Your pawn self.
This virtual selfie,
self.
like this is my identity.
Yeah.
So this was the other clip that I could have played to talk about Tinder.
Sorry, Tim.
keep you waiting.
Sorry, is that how you really look?
What do you mean?
Well, your face.
What do you mean? This is my face. This is how I look.
It's just that.
It's just the what? This is my face. This is my face.
Well, hello there. Hi. Hey. You like?
Flasher. Ignore.
Crazy day today. Absolutely non-stop. How about you?
So, you were telling me...
Oh, yeah. So we were...
sorry to interrupt you. Could you stand up really quick?
Yeah.
Yeah? Stand up straight, please.
Yeah.
Measurements.
Oh, hey. How are you?
Could you stick your arm out? Just
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, that's great.
Hey. How you doing?
He's still persistent. Wow.
Hi.
I'll check this guy out.
I don't usually do this, but I just have to say, you've got the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
Would you mind if I joined you?
Not at all. Are you from round here? Everything okay?
Hi. I don't usually do
Most
this,
beautiful
but I
eyes.
just have to say, you've got the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen.
That's nice.
Hey, my pet. Will you up to you later? Hi.
You still don't actually know your surname?
It's Cook.
Oh, Cook. With an E?
That's the one. Yeah. What, you gonna Facebook stalk me or something?
She is.
Oh, you actually are.
I like that. What's wrong with your nose in that picture?
This is like a bad...
Oh dear. They aren't your friends, are they? Actually, no thanks.
That's pretty nail on the head right there.
Yeah. Perfect.
Perfect. Online dating is that bad?
Oh yeah. It is that bad. They nailed it.
I need to change my profile to like how the women are putting their ages younger than they are. I need to put my height taller than I am, but like 6'5" or something. And then when they call me on, I'll just say I identify as 6'5".
That's my identity.
Yeah, I mean, if someone can identify as a, if a man can identify as a woman, then why can't someone identify as a 6'5"?
Oh, cool, man. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And that's why I'm starting my life coach thing, my life coach business, where I basically put people in a circle, run them through a circle of repetitive action that goes nowhere. And I just can't. Do you want to get laid? Do you want to meet new people tonight? Why don't you join me and let me train you on how to do this, how to get it done? Are you socially awkward? The first project is only $1,500, but if you want the full, what I call the power package, that's $5,000. You get all the secrets on how to communicate with people and how to, build relationships on and offline, by the way.
You got it made.
Yep.
You've got to start at $39 though. I think the $29 is the way to go.
29? That's too cheap. No, these people
start
got
at
money.
29, then $199.
Upscale.
No, they charge like
$199, and then
$600, $800 for these courses.
It's they're terrified and desperate. So anything, I'm joking, but there is a 2,500 course for how to, exactly what I was just saying, how to be a man and how to get laid, and just go learn how to be a narcissist or something like that. And they charge 2,500. It's amazing.
Neocon, you should set up the first course where all you talk about is what you're gonna talk about in the second course. And that's what, and they're already sunken costs, so they're gonna pay for the second one.
Right. That's how they work anyway. They were like, "Do you want to know? Do you really want to know the secret? Do you want to know?" And then they tell you one little point, and they say, "Oh, but if you want to hear the rest of all this stuff, sign up for my main course. I will show you." And people dive into it. That's what I was triggered off of last time in the in-person meeting. Like people taking advantage of people's naivete.
People taking
I
advantage
just
of
figured
people.
if you can't beat them, join them. So I'm a life coach now. Yeah.
That's the current. Everyone's marketing. Yeah, everyone's pitching some course.
Yeah. There's even that version of that in the arts as well. There are people who coach artists on how to, and it's just they'll put you through hoops. You're just circling in place because that's something you have to learn yourself. So people will come out and say they have the ability to train artists and to get you to make sales and stuff like that.
I've heard of that book, The Artist's Way, referred to by a couple different creators.
Yeah.
That also has an online course too.
Yeah.
Artist's Way.
It's rubbish.
Oh.
I have the book. I someone recommended.
12 weeks. Yeah. 12-week course.
They have a program. They have all these work, little exercises.
$150. Lifetime access.
Right.
That's pretty good from a 1992 book.
Right.
A lot of people like
it's sort of like
their handheld.
The concept of therapy, where the therapist kind of puts you in that loop, in that circle.
9:30 for anybody who has more exciting things to do. Being a weeknight. But we'll see how long this goes. $150, not bad. But the podcasts that I heard about, they talk good about this. A lot of people have a lot of doubt, or a lot of people have a lot of shame. Crippling shame and anxiety because they've listened to others too much. They don't know who they are because they don't know how to restrain themselves. Because we can't touch people anymore. We can't tease people. We can't laugh about sadness. Sadness and trauma is like, let's give it tons of space and cover it up. Suffocate people. Grannon's in therapy now.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. What do you think about that? That was interesting.
He opened the door to despair. He's interviewing, or he's supposedly talking to multiple therapists to get a good one. So that's an upgrade. He did a live today, so he's still putting content out there.
Deep down inside, I felt like that's where it was heading. From the last session with Pierre that we were talking about last time, I kind of felt intuitively that he was gonna say something like, "And I'm taking coaching," or "I'm in therapy. I'm back in therapy."
Well, he didn't. I'd say that he never fully dived into his breakup. He never fully opened up to his heartbreak or his childhood trauma.
So what was? But he has all this knowledge that he's been sharing, right? Like especially with his courses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So my question, and it's just plainly out of curiosity, like, is it possible for someone to have that much knowledge of something and not do it themselves?
Well, you're equating knowledge with skill.
An
So-
you showed a beautiful photo of a guy sitting inside the brain, which was so beautiful. It was just like,
Oh, that one.
yeah, it's like, just, yeah, that one, and then one watching the egg. Yeah.
So Crannon's strength is he's good with language, and he has good insights, but he's openly admitted that he doesn't have much of a pain tolerance. So when his memories were too strong, most likely he's going to limp out. He's admitted that. The persona he puts online, that's sort of a false persona of being a tough guy. In person, he's much more gentle or wimpy or codependent. He still has codependent issues. So that'd be my curiosity if he goes into after he goes into therapy, if he's able to improve on his codependence, or if he discovers he has neurodiversity. So, on the Visceral Gravitas forums, one of the members from overseas in Europe somewhere, she theorized that he has a lot of Tourette's traits. And he's already admitted he has tics and physical tics and verbal tics. But also Tourette's people, they have amazing, they can play with tone and language. So they can emphasize tone and language to get a point across real well. But at the same time, someone with Tourette's gets a dopamine boost by themselves by saying something cool. And Grannon's admitted that when he's at home with himself, he'll make up voices and just have fun talking to himself with different voices. So he can self-soothe himself with his Tourette's, and he's self-soothing his YouTube audience with his linguistic range. But that's a distraction from him working on his unresolved emotional wounds and his childhood trauma.
It's very interesting. I can see it now.
So yeah, your earlier critiques from people talking about Grannon being all over the place and inconsistent. Yeah. He's entertaining.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He can capture some deep truths, but applying it is harder. This was from today, so he's almost like calling himself out right now. Where is it?
The gap between the thought and the word and then the deed can be big. Why is it so big? Because the feel isn't there.
I was going to try to link this with my tension thing, the gap, but since I went reverse direction from Pankaj's flooding, it came out all distorted. So.
The feel is missing. We don't do what we think, we do what we feel. What you feel is real. What you think is horseshit. What you feel is real.
Now, think of this as talking to himself, even though he's talking to the YouTube audience. Imagine that he's also talking to himself.
What you think is horseshit. Now, I'm not saying only go with your feelings, be irrational, do whatever you feel. I just feel, I'm just going to feel. No. Be sensible
You see, he's making that voice and he's getting a little boost. He has fun playing voices.
Be logical, have a philosophy, have a moral philosophy, and act with discipline. Be kind to people. The people who are around you are children in adult bodies. They're frightened and they're vulnerable. Doesn't matter how big somebody is, how muscly they are, how rich they are, or beautiful, or
He's not warning people about himself.
or whatever you see them as. Be kind. People are very, very, very.
Oh, is he telling YouTube commenters to be nice to him? Is that an indirect injunction?
Fragile, generally speaking. So we have this thing where we say, okay, what I think is true. But actually the truth is it's only ever what you feel. You're only ever doing what you feel.
Now, I was going to try to link that with tension. I never got there. But if you could relabel feelings as just tension, emotional tension and creative tension, take away the emotional labels. Just recognize it as mental tension. And what you want to do with the emotional and creative tension is you just want to get optimal tension. Not too much, not too little. It's always be at the sweet spot of emotional tension. So you're looking forward to something. You have some life in your step. But some people hate emotion so much they have numbed their emotion, then they're just numbless. They're lifeless. That's not enough tension. You want to keep your life exciting enough that you have some emotional tension. And you want to have some purpose in life, so you have creative tension. But when we add emotional labels and whatnot, then it gets confusing.
So if you say, well, no, because I'm using reason. If you are really using reason, it's because you feel like using reason. It's because you emotionally are in a relationship with reason that is to a greater degree functional.
Now, this is him using reason to trap his mind. Does he know that? He's trying to trap the audience, but if you look at him talking to himself, imagine that he's not just talking just to YouTube. He was talking to himself, and he's talking to himself to reason to trap him into a certain behavior or into a certain belief.
You feel it, so you do it. We don't do what we think, we do what we feel. What you feel is real. The rest is propaganda. Sometimes we just sit there smelling our own farts. I hate that. It's one of my pet peeves. I sit there listening to
This is a weird metaphor.
I would never
Smelling farts.
and I always no, you don't. I've seen you. Shut the fuck up. Nobody needs you to act like this. Nobody's expecting a saint. Stop drinking your own Kool-Aid. Stop getting high on your own farts. I'm so frigging amazing.
See, he's just like diving into character. He's getting a high playing this role. That's why we enjoy watching him, because he's having fun getting into this character, playing with his voice and fully going into it. He's entertaining.
Compared to everyone. No. Actually, you're not. You're not. You're not different. You're not special. Stop it. Stop it. What we feel is real. What we think, what we say. I mean, I have to watch people as a job. I have to observe people. And as part of that job, I have to observe myself. The gap between the thought and the word and then the deed can be big. Why is it so big? Because the feel isn't there. The feel is missing. We don't do what we think. We do what we feel. So what I just said about what you feel is real. The only thing that's real is your feelings. The only thing that's real is your feelings. The rest is just banter. It's just pontification. And it's easy to lie. Fuck, it's so easy to lie. You just say words and make sounds with your mouth and throat, and out it comes and you lie. But your feelings, like, you can't lie a feeling. You can't lie through a feeling.
So that was this afternoon? 4 o'clock? 3 o'clock? But if he's talking to himself, because he said he had the thought earlier, and then he wanted to share it to the YouTube audience, then he could be self-reflecting and self-critiquing himself, but then he's projecting it outward onto YouTube, because if it's useful for him, then he assumes that it's useful for audience. But then we take it, we're assuming that he's just talking to the audience, and he's some high and mighty, further along person. But he's human. So what if he has big biceps?
Nobody's pretty.
That's what the comments
That's
will
the-
say. Oh, he
yeah.
has pretty eyes. If
That's,
he cared
that's the
about
thing
that,
about,
he could have better lighting. He still has blown up. Too
or
white.
he could be wearing light makeup too. Pierre might have given him some good makeup tips to enhance features.
Yes, if he wanted to be pretty, he could improve on the camera or lighting or yeah, just simple stuff. So someone summarize what Kurt missed.
Feel the sadness.
Oh. Is that what we said?
Well, that's the root of it, because out of the root, you're gonna find out who you are and not the false self, and the goal setting. Set a smaller goal, not a huge goal, and to create tension, but little tension.
And enjoy tension.
Enjoy it.
'Cause that's life. Life without tension means you just feel more depressed.
Yeah.